I need to steam my shirt because I forgot to do this last night. Alright, I'm all ready now. I'm wearing my sub fusk, which is basically full academic dress at Oxford, and this is what you've got to wear underneath your gown. So this is my master's gown. It's very cool, and I love the weird flaps here. I actually had to buy this because there was an event that I did last year, and so I bought it ahead of time so I could use it for that and then also wear it for graduation. But that's why I haven't hired one, because for my undergraduate, of course, I hired one, and it's so nice to be wearing it. This is it. This is what Dad's wearing, and then Mum is wearing a lovely dress. Are you excited?
I'm very excited.
We get to have a graduation ceremony in Latin.
Looking forward to that.
So we then started the drive to Oxford, and I was all dressed and feeling very excited, kind of nervous. It was just so wonderful to be at Jesus College again after so many months. Now, I have already had one graduation for my undergrad, but this graduation was very, very different. There are so many traditions as part of the ceremony. So graduation is held in the Sheldonian Theatre, which is the same building where matriculation is held, and it's this absolutely beautiful building. They started building this in 1664, and it was designed by Sir Christopher Wren, which is incredible. And at the beginning, there is a moment where everybody stands up to clap and say thank you to their parents and the people who have allowed them to get where they are today, which I just love as a tradition. The ceremony involves a lot of Latin and bowing, and honestly, I love how steeped in tradition it is. I think it makes graduation feel more special, and I liked that it was so solemn. Outfit of the day, wearing my academic dress, otherwise known as sub fusk, here at Oxford, and then this is the MST gown, and it is so beautiful. Look, it's got like embroidery all across here, very decorative and very nice. So then there is a second part of your graduation which happens in college, where you actually get your degree certificate. After all of that, I was filming an interview with Jesus College for their Instagram. Okay, I'm now just about to film with Jesus College. I'm about to do an interview sort of thing. This is very messy all of a sudden. And then it was done, and graduation was over, and I'd done the interview, and we just wandered around Oxford. Just quite funny. Good morning, it's the day after graduation. It's about 8:30, it's quite late. I slept in a little bit. I'm just now going to come downstairs and I'm going to read. Also, I want to show you what my mini graduation present was. So after graduation, of course, we went into Blackwell's, and we also went into the Bodleian Library gift shop, and my parents bought me this. It's so beautiful. So it's a Bodleian Library's book coaster, and I've really wanted to get this basically since I started the university. So I'm currently reading or rereading A Little Princess by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is a first edition, which is so unbelievable. The book was first published in 1905, and this is the 1905 American first edition, and it's got illustrations as well. Okay, so I've just ground my coffee. Got like one sip left of my green tea in this very beautiful Spirited Away mug. I've been working on a summary paragraph of my PhD proposal because I've got a call tomorrow with my master's supervisor. I'm just going to send it through to her before the call. It's quite scrappy, like the way I've written it. It's bullet pointed, so I'm going to come back to it at the end of the day and formulate it into prose, but I kind of want to take some space away from it in order to do that better later. It's so funny because I graduated yesterday and now today is focused on PhD proposals and the next step in terms of academia, and I don't know, I quite like that. I'm feeling quite motivated after being in Oxford yesterday as well, and just incredibly excited about being able to work on a new project after kind of being back in Oxford and being back in that academic space. And I'm also heading to Oxford again on Tuesday because I want to go and look at some manuscripts, so that should be really nice. So I'm only editing and posting this video like 4 months after actual graduation. So I graduated in November and it's now March, and I didn't end up actually applying for my PhD this cycle. So this is really funny to look back on and see. And like really the whole of last year, my plan had been to just go straight into the PhD. So it's really funny to kind of look back on this retrospectively. Okay, I just finished writing out this proposal and now it's getting kind of late and it's probably going to be dark in about half an hour, so I'm going to want to walk while I still can. It's also so beautiful. I actually love November. I'm finally on my walk and it's only like 3:45, which is quite bad. I do like to usually go out for a walk in the morning, but one thing led to another. It's so gorgeous. It's been misty all day, but not heavily misty. Like, it's not thick mist. It's just a light glaze of mist. It's just slightly dreamlike. I mean, just look at those colours. Suddenly a very moldy pumpkin. Look at the fur around his eyes. Safe to say, I will not be putting the pumpkin back on my head. Hello, good morning. So then on Monday, I actually headed back up to Oxford. I do try to go to Oxford once a week or once a fortnight, and on the train I was reading The Romantic Lady, which is a short story by Frances Hodgson Burnett. You can only read this online, I believe. It's so good though. It's a Christmas story and definitely has the same air as A Little Princess. We're just coming into Oxford now, and I spent the journey writing a Christmas story. It's one that I've been thinking about for a while, like since last year, and so I wrote a very, very rough first draft, which isn't complete, but it's a really nice way to spend the journey. I do love writing on trains and reading on trains. I just love trains. It's funny actually because that story would become In Farthing Wood, which is a short story I then printed and published just like 50 copies of on my website. So I headed straight to the Bodleian because I wanted to go and see some manuscripts in the West End. I'd requested quite a few, and this was such a successful archive trip. Like, I found something really interesting. It fitted so well with what I wanted to do for my PhD, so this was amazing. I'm going into the archives now. I just finished up at the West End. I saw 8 manuscripts and there were some really great things in there. Like, I'm very pleasantly surprised. It's just so pretty. Hi, Charlotte. It's beautiful. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm off to work now. I'm also sorry because this has been the most inconsistent vlog ever. I just got back from work and I had a very good day. It's Thursday night and I'm sorry, I've been so bad at vlogging. I think I did a clip as I was coming home yesterday and haven't picked up the camera since then. I am so exhausted as well because Thursday is my most tiring work day, and so I got back and then I instantly had a meeting as well with my management. So I had that call and then had a shower and caught up on some emails, and I'm gonna go downstairs and get something to eat now. My dad was going to make dinner, but I'm really hungry now and he's out, so I might just eat. My room is also something of a state. You can see things behind me. I wanted to show you what I bought in Oxford the other day though. So I bought some Christmas cards. These are the Tolkien Letters from Father Christmas. I bought some of these illustrated cards last year, but a different illustration, and so this year I went for these. These are quite expensive too. These were £8.50 for 10 cards, but they're so beautiful that I can send those to my closest friends. And then I met up with my friend Charlotte and we went to our favourite bookshop, which is the Oxfam in Oxford, and I bought this copy of Pericles. It's from 1929 and I love the red ink. I do have a critical edition of Pericles, which I only recently bought, but this one's nice and pocket-sized and I think I'm really gonna like Pericles, so I bought that. And then I got some candlesticks from John Lewis. It's 10 candlesticks and these very self-explanatory, they come in very useful. And then I finally got 2 presents, one for my mum, one for my sister, but they're for Christmas. And so I did buy quite a few things and it was really nice to be in Oxford the other day. So having shown you graduation and the few days after graduation, I thought I would reflect a little bit on Oxford and what I learnt during my time at Oxford. Now, whilst I was doing my masters at Oxford, I inevitably did learn a lot. I learned so much around the material cultures of texts. I learned about early modern writing that isn't mainstream and which I otherwise would not have been introduced to. I learned so many interesting methodologies and ways of thinking and was just introduced to new ideas. However, I also learned a lot which wasn't academic, and that's what I want to talk through now, like the things I learned from Oxford that weren't academic, because I did learn a lot and I feel like my approach to education, to learning, is different because of the wonderful, exciting, incredible opportunity I had to study at Oxford. So I'm just going to talk through this. Now, the number one thing which I found change was how open I am to discussion around what I'm researching. I don't think before Oxford I was as open to discussion around what I was researching. Like, I kept my research very much to myself, and I said this briefly in a previous video and someone quite rightfully commented, but you've shared your whole learning study journey online. So for me to say I'm private about research feels kind of ridiculous. But I think there's a big difference between like chronicling the process of studying, which is what I have historically done, and actually sharing what I'm studying. Like, I will always share things that I find interesting. I will summarize articles, I will try and give an insight into what I'm learning and studying, but I don't touch on what my actual arguments are in my essays or what I'm specifically researching, like any research gaps that I'm trying to fill. And still, when I was at Oxford and creating content, I wouldn't share that information. However, while I was doing my masters, I started sharing my research with the people around me. Like, I started sharing with peers and friends much more openly than I ever would have done at undergraduate level. And that's because I saw how important discussion and conversation could be. And discussing your research with somebody, like going through your argument with somebody, can help you get a new perspective on it. Like, of course it would, but I just never thought to do that before. I was always too embarrassed to share my work because I was like, oh no, what if someone thinks that it's a really ridiculous argument or it doesn't make any sense? But actually, I've grown to realise that that's exactly why you should share it, because it can point out the inconsistencies for you. When you say it aloud, you're like, oh wait, actually that bit doesn't make sense. But also it gives you a completely new perspective, because you could be doing an essay about poetry and you might be talking to someone who's an expert in music and they might direct you towards something or encourage you to think differently about something. Like, I felt like my ideas had the chance to grow much more than I could when I was working in complete isolation. And I think the reason for that is Oxford as a learning environment is very discursive and conversation is hugely encouraged. Like, so much systemically is rooted in conversation. So for example, like, you get these wonderful formal dinners at Oxford. You will have seen photos of them. They are absolutely glorious. I think back on them and I think, how on earth was I going to these formal dinners like multiple times a week? And it kind of becomes a normal thing as well. Like, how can that become a normal thing? How can that be like a regular thing that you're doing? But the formals at Oxford and Cambridge are there for discussion, and it's a time where you can come together with people from lots of different disciplines who are doing different subjects, different research, and then you talk about your research and you talk about your ideas over dinner, and it's a chance for like ideas to be exchanged and for you to think newly about what you're researching. And it's kind of the first question that somebody would ask you when you were at dinner. So you're kind of sat along these long tables and you will be like, and you might be there with one friend, but because it's a long banqueting hall sort of style, you will be sitting near to people who you've never met before, and the first question that somebody will ask is, what are you researching? Like, what's your research focus? And so you're kind of forced into a position of like sharing what you're researching. And as I say, at undergraduate I was much more private about what I was working on because I was embarrassed, but when that's the question that you're consistently being asked, you have to be able to articulate what you're researching and be comfortable answering that question. And even though it was kind of uncomfortable, I'm so pleased for that, because as I say, I just think it gave me a chance to expand my ideas more than I otherwise would have been able to. Second thing which I've written down here is just the importance of reading irresponsibly and widely and without limits. Actually, I use reading, but I should say like consuming media, consuming literature, consuming art, just with breadth as well as depth. Like, Oxford is so, like, there's so much constantly going on in Oxford. You couldn't go to everything. There are plays, there are concerts, there are talks, there are lectures, there are symposiums and conferences, and there's so much at your fingertips that you can go to. It's kind of the best thing about Oxford, maybe I would even say. Like, there's always something you can look into, and I went to a huge variety of things. I went to a talk on Sassoon and like equestrian studies. I went to concerts like Vivaldi and Christmas concerts. I'm trying to think of others, but I went to quite a few concerts in the Sheldonian, and I tried to go to a symposium on the hot air balloon, but I got the wrong date, which was really quite sad. I'm trying to think what else. I went to plays at the Oxford Playhouse, like constantly stuff going on, and it was consuming so widely and consuming material which wasn't related to my research focus, that kind of gave me like new perspective in order to actually approach my research. Like, all of this and all of the artistic exposure that I was getting, all of this exposure to new ideas was helping me to hone in and kind of understand my own research. And that's something I knew before, but I don't think I'd really embraced to the same degree. I kind of made a goal for myself that I was going to like try and make the most of all of these academic, intellectual, artistic opportunities around me, and I found it having a very tangible effect on the way that I was thinking, and it encouraged me to bring together ideas and thoughts and think synoptically in a way that I wasn't doing before. It's actually where commonplacing comes in as well. It's kind of like a form of mental commonplacing, I think, and probably not a coincidence that alongside this I was also getting really into commonplacing and kind of compiling these ideas and things that I was finding in multiple places together in one book where I could read them and look at them alongside each other. The third thing is just a small reflection on productivity and what productive work looks like. And this is something I think I'd been moving towards anyway, but output is not the most important thing. Like, amount of work isn't the most important thing, it's depth of thought. And sometimes the most productive thing, often the most productive thing when you're working on an essay or an extended research project, is to go on a walk and to just think through and theorize, and allowing yourself that space for deep thinking can be so much more like efficient and helpful towards like research, as opposed to just sitting with the essay and looking at it. And actually, as an offshoot of that, I would say that when it comes to seminar prep, I realised that the best way to prepare for a seminar was to look at one thing in lots and lots and lots of depth, or maybe two things, and go into the seminar with that as like a focus and something which you'd found while researching, which you found very interesting and that you'd like gone away and properly looked into. I think the best seminars that I had were ones where people in the seminar group had done just this, and everyone had gone away and looked at something very specific in lots of detail, and it made for the most interesting conversation because people were citing things that not everyone had read. They were raising like ideas and kind of focusing on passages which I hadn't like thought about in as much depth. And I think if everyone in a seminar group does that, it's going to have the most fruitful effect, and you're going to get the most from the seminar. And also just practicing that deep thinking. I feel like I got much more from the texts that I studied when I was focusing on just like looking at something specific in lots and lots of depth, as opposed to telling myself I had to know everything about this topic that I was doing for 1 week, which is just impossible. Then the fourth thing is just the importance of manuscripts as a form of connection to the past. I've always been fascinated by manuscripts, but I've never really been in a position where I had access to them, whereas at Oxford I did have access to them. The Bodleian is right there, the Western, where they've got an incredible number of manuscripts. I was in a position where I could handle these and I could go and see them, and I made it a goal to go every week to see at least one thing, and I just felt so much more like personally and viscerally connected to the material I was reading when I saw it in manuscript. And so studying at Oxford just really emphasised the importance of manuscripts when looking at literary texts. Number 5 is acknowledging the link between aesthetic and productivity and like work output. And I'm aware that this one might sound kind of ridiculous. Like before Oxford, I was thinking about the importance of aesthetic in relation to work, and kind of like intuitively I knew, or I did think, that it was important. Like, we're multi-sensory beings. Like, I know that when I like my desk set up, I'm going to be more productive. When you're studying in these libraries, these extravagant, beautiful, like incredibly old libraries, there's a serenity and there's a peace, and it's so conducive to focus. And I think the space of Oxford and the space of these libraries in particular bestows importance onto the work that you're doing. Like, it makes you take yourself more seriously. Kind of, I think, links to, I was looking at Walter Pater and Oscar Wilde and the theories of aesthetics from the fin de siècle, and Oscar Wilde, for example, comments on the spires of Oxford and how they are inspirational. Like, Oxford is a beautiful space, and studying at Oxford made me just hyper aware of how much architecture specifically can change the way that you think and change your mood and change your ability to focus. I'm really interested to look into this more, actually, and there has been so much research on the effect of architecture on the brain and how good architecture and, you know, like high ceilings, for example, can change the way that your brain actually works. It has a neurological effect. I think being in Oxford just made me appreciate the aesthetics of architecture more, but in relation to how well you work. And then the final thing, number 6, is more of a personal reflection, which is I was surprised by how stressed I became. I went into the Masters not thinking I was going to put myself under loads of pressure, and I thought that my mindset had changed since I was at undergraduate, when I was getting so stressed about essays and putting so much pressure on every single one. And I had that intention set, and I thought I was kind of at this realization point that there are things that are more important, and that a bad mark on an essay isn't the end of the world. But when I went to do my Masters, I was very, very stressed by the end. And I think more than the workload, actually, it was the expectation. Like, you want to do well, and at least for me, when I was there, I wanted to make the most of the opportunity which I'd been given, and I didn't want to waste the opportunity of being at this university where I dreamed of being for such a long time. And it was that pressure, I think, which ended up overruling my initial intention to keep things in perspective. So essentially, I think it just made me realise that it's one thing to tell yourself that essays don't matter and to go in with this intention, but it's another thing entirely to kind of enact it. But yes, that's all I kind of that's all I wrote down, and the things I just wanted to share. Like, it's very eclectic, but I don't know if I'll talk again about my experience at Oxford, and so I thought I'd just put this together with the graduation vlog. I say that I'm not going to film another video about Oxford, but I could also do a Q&A about Oxford specifically and how Oxford works, maybe some tips for applications. So if you want to see that, then let me know and leave any questions you might have down below. But thank you so much, and I hope you have more than just a productive week.